clear this is a full-scale invasion.
Rubber bullets, helicopters, armored vehicles.
You are tuning into Revolution News Link, linking information, experience, revolutionaries, and making it mainstream. I'm your host, Chantel. Please hit the like button and share this stream. Hit your notifications. Make sure that you are notified when we go live. You can follow us on all of our platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Spotify. Just search the Leon Block. All of your support means a lot. Now, let's go ahead and get into it. There is a couple pieces that I want to get into before we start on the rest of the news. This article, this is the labor files, but I want to share this one with you first.
Whatever you want, no rules. We support free speech, write whatever you want, no rules on the free speech law. You want to write whatever you want?
You guys know about Moms for Liberty? I want to hear a little bit, but I want to hear about it. Texas.
Texas, where at?
Small town outside Austin.
Oh, my son lives in Austin.
Nice.
Let's talk about a liberal cesspool. Okay, so
Sorry.
we want to be involved in our public schools because whether you have kids in school or not, we all pay taxes. And those taxes are going to fund some of these pornographic books that are in the libraries.
So it says here, everybody is important and has the right to be safe and happy.
Right, well,
What's the issue with that?
well, look up here.
Everybody has the right to choose their own gender by listening to their own heart and mind. Everyone gets to choose if they are a boy or a girl, or both, or neither, or something else, and no one else gets to choose for them.
Yeah, these are the kid-friendly versions.
So that just sounds like freedom. Lindell TV.
And by the way, I noticed a patriot in our midst, Mike Lindell. You stand up. He's a patriot. He's a patriot.
Mike Lindell rose to fame, or infamy, over the last decade as the CEO of MyPillow. His infomercials were hard to miss, but Lindell's public image went from quirky to controversial when he started appearing with Trump in 2017. Since the election, he's become the face of the Stop the Steal movement and a hero to Q followers.
4 years ago, somebody told us my pillow guy was going to save the world.
We got attacked by China and they flipped this election.
In 2021, he hosted a cyber symposium, a 72-hour live stream event that promised a treasure trove of evidence proving that China helped Joe Biden steal the election.
You must be dead certain that the proof that you have is incontrovertible.
It's 100%.
He pledged $5 million to anyone who could disprove his data.
There's a $5 million prize.
Despite multiple experts coming forward, Lindell never paid.
I'd like my share.
Yeah, these are my guys.
But your guys, who are you?
Yeah, Vice.
What?
Vice.
Vice?
Vice.
Vice? Are you guys corrupt?
Are you?
The story of QAnon
You think Q will ever come back?
Q what?
isn't over.
The main name is Mike Flynn. I actually think he's an enemy to this country.
Do you believe the violence on January 6th was justified morally?
The conspiracy grows.
Not a vaccine, it's a bioweapon.
The real search for answers
Do you think America's heading towards a civil war?
I was in the Oval Office meeting. I know the whole story.
is just beginning. QAnon, the search for Q. New episode Wednesday at 10.
And so this piece that I'm waiting for the ad to go away on,
A 4-part
it's kind of
investigative event. on
basically touching on racism in its totality. And the reporter gets into a really interesting spat with this guy.
I've been hyper-focused since I found the evidence that I got on January 9th of last year. We've had more evidence and more stuff, more crime committed than any crime in the history of the world. Let's talk about Pennsylvania.
Well, you seem to be doing quite a hell of a job with that. Look, you have your own TV station. I don't know if we need it, but it is.
I'm going to tell everybody this. Fox turned on. Fox is the worst. I will say that. You're one step above Fox.
That's all right. All right. Well, thank you for your time, sir.
God bless you.
Well, that was exciting.
Oh man, I'm so proud of you. That was some real energy, man. You really brought some serious energy there.
You know me. I try to keep de-escalate things. I at least try, or at least to remain respectful.
You did. You were being respectful with him, I think.
When you have large groups of people together like that, believing that, we are the enemy as the press, situations like that happen, and
that
that's
actually could have escalated a lot more. I was like, this is kind of fun, but also, is he about to get shot?
I have mixed feelings about it because I didn't want to be that version of myself, but it just felt like I had to fight back. That was the only thing to do to maintain any kind of integrity. What do you make of the straw poll indicating that 90.4% of the people who attended CPAC think that the election was stolen?
Well, I think it's a horrifying number. I think by far one of the biggest problems that we face as a country right now is that the GOP is co-opting the term election integrity in order to push a very dark, nefarious agenda that includes disenfranchising a large amount of American voters, making it a lot harder for people to vote, and making sure that their base are the only people who have access to that. A lot of the measures that they're putting in place are very specifically targeting Black communities. They're making it harder for them to vote. They're reducing the number of polling locations in Black neighborhoods, and they're increasing numbers of polling locations in white neighborhoods. It takes the voice away from a large amount of the American people.
One of the things I can't help but notice is that this is essentially Stop the Steal, but on a legislative level.
In many ways, I think Stop the Steal was just that. Obviously, it had a lot to do with Trump. It had a lot to do with continuing to break down our trust in institutions and divide the country, but it also had to do with the fact that our demographics are shifting and that we are not going to be in a majority white country anymore, and that is not going to work in their favor. The only way that they are able to stay in power is to keep people from voting.
I don't think it's really our job anymore just to sit there and be agreeable. We have to push back harder this season because we didn't know how serious things would get when we first started doing this. 34% of Americans think that violent action towards the government is sometimes justified.
And that's not even over Republicans, that's all Americans.
That's all Americans. That's 1 in 3. 1, 2, 3.
Recently on Twitter, there was this really great thread by this guy named Michael Jensen, extremism researcher for the University of Maryland. Though he studies all kinds of extremism, he's recently had to shift to domestic terrorism because that has become the biggest threat to our national security. So he is specifically looking at Q crimes, and I think that he is going to be able to give us a sneak peek into what the world looks like if Q continues to spread.
We've seen an increase in all forms of criminal activity since Q stopped posting in 2020. So 2021 was quite an active year in terms of QAnon-related criminal activity. There were nearly 50 crimes committed around the world in the name of the conspiracy theory, and that included some high-profile homicides.
The story of QAnon isn't over. The real search for answers
I think America's heading towards a civil war.
is just beginning. QAnon, the search for Q. New episode Wednesday at 10. A 4-part
University of Maryland.
I actually think that the criminal aspect of the conspiracy theory is one that has not garnered as much attention as it should. A lot of people are talking about the bizarre nature of the ideas, these mass mobilization protests that have happened around the world, and of course, January 6th. But what we started to see right away with the QAnon conspiracy theory is that there were individuals that were being mobilized to violence. QAnon is a form of what we call stochastic terrorism, which means that no one is sitting there saying, go kill this person, go bomb this building. Instead, what they're doing is they're causing fear, they're causing anxiety, and they're identifying villains, knowing that somebody will take that and on their own determine that they need to take action. right? So what we've seen in QAnon crime and QAnon violence is that this is not being orchestrated by anyone outside of the crimes. These are individuals that latched onto the narratives and were motivated on their own to mobilize and commit these acts.
Is there an increase in violence since Q stopped posting?
We've seen an increase in all forms of criminal activity since Q stopped posting in 2020. So 2021 was quite an active year in terms of QAnon-related criminal activity. There were nearly 50 crimes committed around the world in the name of the conspiracy theory, and that included some high-profile homicides. So this really is a global political movement now that is inspiring criminal activity around the globe.
Do you think we're going to see an increase in political violence in the years to come?
By all metrics that we have, we've seen a fairly rapid increase. Whether that trend continues depends on whether the movements continue to garner mainstream support, whether they feel that their wishes are being met by political representatives, or whether they feel a need to mobilize to achieve their goals. And so the midterm elections, and especially the election in 2024, will have a major impact on what we see happen in terms of political violence in this country.
What keeps you up at night?
QAnon's ability to motivate individuals to engage in acts of interpersonal violence, and especially family violence. So we've seen the most devastating and tragic cases of QAnon-inspired violence has been within the family unit. It's not been standoffs at the Hoover Dam or wild plots to bomb the Illinois Capitol building. It's been parents harming their children.
What role does religion play in motivating these acts of violence?
QAnon followers often make appeals to religion. QAnon presents itself as fitting squarely within the battle of good and evil. So they are on the side of good, fighting these forces, and that resonates with various types of religious communities. But what we've seen is that in the evangelical Christian community in particular is that this narrative is really resonating. And so we see more and more pastors and churchgoers talking about QAnon and framing it as this good and evil battle.
It's been the fight against good versus evil since then.
I don't give two craps what the media thinks about me. We'll burn the whole media system down. Welcome to the house, CNN. We break your spells. We break your curse. We got your first name. We got your last name. We even got an address.
Execute judgment on you, COVID-19.
First of all, keep in mind that the coming Antichrist will be of Jewish descent.
Wow. So, hey, comrades, I'm going to break into a little bit of news before I go to the next clip. So Sweden, of course, if you haven't known yet, discovered a fourth leak in the Nord Stream pipeline as NATO cities sabotage. This is via Democracy Now! Sweden's Coast Guard said Thursday it had discovered a fourth leak in the Nord Stream pipelines built to carry Russian gas under the Baltic Sea, as NATO formally blamed sabotage for underwater explosions that led to Monday's rupture. NATO did not blame Russia for the attack, though leaders of several NATO member nations have blamed the Kremlin without citing evidence. Meanwhile, Russian officials suggested the U.S. or one of its allies is to blame. The disaster is now thought to be the largest fossil gas leak in history. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates it added 0.1% of estimated annual global methane emissions to the atmosphere. And there is an article available stating that it has been shut off. Senate approves a $12.3 billion in new aid to Ukraine in stopgap spending bill. The White House pledges renewed push for passage of Senator Manchin's permitting reform bill. Joe Manchin abandoned his own energy permitting proposal that would have fast-tracked federal review of permits for new energy projects, including the Mountain Valley fracked gas pipeline. This week, the White House said it would continue to work with Senator Manchin to find a new vehicle to get his permitting reform legislation through Congress. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said in a statement, quote, "The president supports Senator Manchin's plan because it is necessary for our energy security and to make clean energy available to the American people." In Brazil, voters head to the polls this happened today, if I'm not mistaken. In most of the world, it's already happened. For an election that could see far-right President Jair Bolsonaro replaced by former President Luiz Lula da Silva. Polls show Lula has a strong lead over Bolsonaro, but it remains unclear if he has enough support to win the 11-way race outright. If not, Brazil will hold a runoff on October 30th. Lula has been running on a platform to reduce inequality, preserve the Amazon rainforest, and protect Brazil's indigenous communities. There is widespread fear in Brazil that Bolsonaro could attempt to stage a coup if he loses the election. Earlier in the campaign, Bolsonaro said, quote, "Only God will remove me from power. The army is on our side. It's an army that doesn't accept corruption, doesn't accept fraud." In Afghanistan, at least 19 people were killed and more than 24 others injured today as a suicide bomber targeted an education center in the capital of Kabul. India expands abortion access to single women and survivors of marital rape. And Jenny Thomas tells January 6th committee she still believes the 2020 election was stolen. And I want to go to this clip about Israel and Palestine too.
Here is another one. Who killed JFK? Who killed Lincoln? Who attacked the USS Liberty? Who is attacking our liberty? I'll tell you who: Jews. We can see real anti-Semitism. But then there is also a lot of information in these disciplinary files where there is clearly no anti-Semitism whatsoever.
Wow, look at this. 94% of people believe company culture.
Lots of commercials, isn't there? I'll be right back. Hey everyone. So again, you are tuning into Revolution News Link, and I want to touch on the ongoing apartheid issue happening in Palestine, particularly the Gaza Strip. And Al Jazeera did a YouTube video speaking on the atrocities going on, in particular a certain situation that happened pertaining to people standing up and protesting for their rights together in unison, hundreds and maybe thousands of people. Remember, this is one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. And instead of being met with peace talks, they were met with gunfire. This is an issue that has taken the back seat to other situations. And around this time last year, well, spring of last year, there was a big push towards awareness because of what transpired last year. However, if you are following other independent media outlets such as Democracy Now!, you will know that there are still a lot of things happening in that region that mainstream media does not like to touch on. And it's important that people are made
There's
aware
one
of it.
post that reads, "In memory of 4 little footballers, rest in peace." And I'm sure many people will recall these 4 young kids, 9 to 11 years old, playing football on the beach, who were shot dead by Israeli forces. Another example, we demand that International Criminal Court and the UN charge Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel for war crimes against humanity. Very similar. Put Israel on trial for war crimes. To suggest that this is somehow anti-Semitic is simply trying to avoid Israel being called out for its appalling abuses in the occupied territory.
Files reveal a number of party members are investigated for sharing links to a 2017 I-Unit investigation. The lobby establishes ties between the Israeli embassy in London and organizations within the Labour Party. An officer for the parliamentary group Labour Friends of Israel is covertly filmed.
This was film. This is evidence. Now, this is sufficient reason to be investigated because you refer to this film by Al Jazeera that has been seen all over the world, that was actually critically acclaimed in many places. This is an attempt to close down any sort of meaningful political discussion or political debate on these matters.
As well as Labour Friends of Israel, the lobby also exposes links between the Israeli embassy and the grassroots Jewish Labour movement. Both organizations are critics of Corbyn. Many of those investigated by the Labour Party believe that Israel is an apartheid state. Israel was created in 1948 by forming a Jewish homeland within historic Palestine, the culmination of the Zionist dream. In 1967, Israel invaded and occupied the remaining Palestinian land. Israel has since isolated Gaza while building illegal settlements in the West Bank, slowly diminishing the size of a potential Palestinian state. Palestinians effectively live under Israeli military control and do not have equal rights.
It's not anti-Semitic to call Israel an apartheid state. It's simply a fact. We have the Amnesty International report, the Human Rights Watch report. We have Israel's own one, its major human rights organizations, B'Tselem, have also come to this conclusion.
Israel launches an assault on the Gaza Strip following the murder of 3 Israeli teenagers.
What we saw was Israel bombard the Gaza Strip, bombard one of the most densely populated areas on earth. And in the space of 50 days, they killed over 2,200 Palestinians, including 500 children.
You love your stuff because your stuff is amazing. But what if bad
Lots
stuff
and lots and lots
happens?
of ads. I'm so sorry about that.
And I remember, with my brothers, and they try and act quite tough, but they would call me crying on the phone.
It was the most horrific assault on Gaza. The place was devastating. It was a bomb to smithereens. It was a deeply shocking event in a history of repeated shocking events.
Jeremy Corbyn is elected leader of the Labour Party on a radical ticket that challenges Britain's establishment.
When Jeremy Corbyn became leader, we were so overjoyed.
The continuing occupation, the expansion of illegal settlements, and the imprisonment of Palestinian children are an outrage.
At last, we have a Western politician who actually sympathizes with the Palestinians.
And in order to help make that two-state settlement a reality, we will recognize a Palestinian state as soon as we take office.
Anger over events in Gaza means that many of Corbyn's supporters end up in Labour's disciplinary files.
Rot in hell, you Zionist bastards, and those who support them. I boycott Israel because it is a criminal, land-thieving, abusive, murderous, occupying, human rights denying apartheid state. You can't cover your crimes with claims of anti-Semitism. And I personally, when I came across this, must admit that I find it difficult because it is a brutal image. But a liberation struggle by its very nature, by its definition, is going to involve huge frustrations, huge anger, extraordinary suffering. You know, I saw the same thing in South Africa. In 1976, when hundreds of innocent, unarmed school children were shot dead by the apartheid military, of course, there was outrage, anger, and high emotions around the world, and so there should have been. This is no different.
It's somehow implicitly understood that there are things you can't say. So one of them is you can't talk about your experiences in harrowing terms. You have to keep it sort of cool. And you can't talk about Israel in the way that it should be talked about.
When I started hearing a bit more active about anti-Semitism, I was just confused because Palestinians never chose who their occupier was. They didn't choose who forced them out of their homes. They didn't choose which religion they were going to say they acted in the name of. There was no choice in that.
Time to apologise, Mr. Livingston.
Accusations of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party emerge after former London Mayor Ken Livingstone is attacked for claiming that Hitler had been a supporter of Zionism.
You're a lying racist.
Why don't you go
A Nazi apologist. A Nazi apologist. A Nazi apologist. You dare say that Hitler supported Zionism. You've lost it, mate. You need help. You need help. You need help.
The party announces an inquiry into anti-Semitism and other forms of racism. The launch is overshadowed when a pro-Corbyn activist asks a question. Mark Wadsworth wrote a press release that had been criticised by a journalist from the right-leaning Daily Telegraph. He saw the journalist give it to a Labour MP.
I saw that the Telegraph handed a copy of a press release to Bruce Smith MP, so you can see who's working hand in hand. I'm pleased that
She stormed out.
She put out a statement claiming that this activist had been guilty of a classic anti-Jewish trope that Jewish people controlled the media. It's stomach churning. Didn't know she was Jewish. I had no reason to know she was Jewish. I sent through my solicitors, Ruth Smith, a letter saying that what she'd said about me, I could clearly be identified as libelous and that she should withdraw it. She took the statement down. I don't think anybody reported the fact that she took the statement down. It's appalling.
Very existence of my party, the Labour Party, is at stake. Every racist anti-Semite out of the Labour Party. It's time for Jeremy Corbyn to act.
Criticism of the Labour Party mounts, but not all British Jews oppose the Labour leader.
A man who was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse wants to change his name after receiving death threats for 2 years. I will post the links in the comments for you all to read. You can get the link via YouTube. So Gage Grosskreutz was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse during a 2020 protest in Wisconsin, and this week he filed a secret petition to change his legal name. Rittenhouse was acquitted of homicide after fatally shooting 2 people and injuring Grosskreutz. Kamala Harris confronted over equity comments at Congressional Black Caucus Gala. She was seen ignoring what appears to be a rogue reporter at a gala over the weekend after he asked her to clarify her comments on equity impacting the Biden administration's distribution of Hurricane Ian relief. The video, released Saturday evening by the Republican National Committee's research arm, appears to have been taken on Saturday evening as Harris was exiting the 51st annual Phoenix Awards, a dinner hosted by the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Both she and President Biden spoke at the event, where they touted their administration's achievements for Black Americans and repeatedly referenced equity playing a role in their work. The event came one day after Harris sparked outrage from Republicans over her pledge that the Biden White House would take equity into account when divvying up disaster aid. Marco Rubio on Sunday said he would fight against a Hurricane Ian relief bill if it included unrelated spending projects. Rubio said the extra spending bill would deter other lawmakers from voting for disaster relief. Recovery efforts are continuing with more than 1,100 people rescued as of Saturday morning. A maskless woman named Karen gets dragged out of a supermarket after a dramatic meltdown. And yes, her name is Karen. We will post the link in the comments. Biden administration halts student loan relief after GOP attorneys general sue. The Biden administration has put the student debt relief on hold for millions of borrowers after Republican attorneys general in 6 states filed suit in federal court seeking to block President Biden's debt cancellation program. In a court filing in a federal district court in Missouri, the states of Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, and South Carolina argue Biden's debt relief plan is unconstitutional and illegal. Last month, the White House said it would cancel as much as $20,000 per person in student debt to help as many as 40 million borrowers. The Education Department said Thursday that people who've already begun to seek loan forgiveness will still receive it, while others will have to wait while legal challenges play out. ICC opens trial of the man accused of financing the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil top list of most dangerous nations for environmentalists. New research has found that 3 people are killed every week while trying to protect their land from extractive industries. The report by Global Witness documents the murders of more than 1,700 environmental activists over the last decade by mercenaries, hitmen, criminal gangs, or their own governments. Topping the list of the world's deadliest countries for environmental defenders last year was Mexico, with 54 murders. That's followed by Colombia, Brazil, the Philippines, Nicaragua, and India. And the Leon Block Independent Media shared a video to the Facebook page that you can check out that specifically speaks on Colombia and how environmentalists are targeted, specifically one that passed away, one that was murdered in 2021 due to them being at the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the lands that they protect clashing with mercenaries, paramilitary, people that are trying to demolish the rainforest, loggers, and the like. And this has become a big problem. So you can find out more about this article and the rest of the other articles that we talked about in this webisode via Democracy Now! The links are in the comments, along with the other articles, links that we found that are not from Democracy Now! Please find our Facebook page, our YouTube page, share the stream, like, follow, and subscribe to help us grow and to keep us going. Consider donating to the services at the bottom of the screen. Every dollar goes a long way. If you have stories that need to be exposed or events that need shared, please email us at theleonblock@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Just search The Leon Block. That is all the news for the moment. Stay tuned for more. This is a Revolution News Link.